Hey there, welcome back to Beer and Gear. We are having some technical difficulties today.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit, but it's going to be great. I'm super excited about this opportunity to work through all of the tech stuff that we all have to work through every once in a while. It's going to be fine.
Yeah, third time's a charm.
Third time is the charm. Yeah. How you doing, Chris?
Other than the technical stuff, I'm doing pretty good. I have a freshly mowed and weed-eated yard. That's always a nice thing to see.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It's like when you clean your car or mow your grass, everything feels just a little bit nicer.
Just
There's
right.
just that one less thing.
Yes. Yeah, my only real concern for tonight is it's the homecoming dance that Victoria is going to. This is a first.
No.
So we're not going with a boy. So that's a win for me.
Oh, good.
But obviously there's going to be boys there.
Yeah. Well, we can't kill them all.
No, but I'm realizing I may need to invest in more guns. I have an insufficient supply.
Insufficient supply for having a little girl. I also have a little girl.
Yes.
But I have not had to deal with the homecoming dance yet.
Yeah, the game did
some sort of like social or something at school the other day for her, and I was like, I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, at that age, who knows? I know we went to the homecoming game last night, and it looked like Lee, through some crazy events, was going to hang on, but they lost with 5 seconds to go.
Oh, no.
Yeah, now that makes them 0-4 on the season. So, I mean, at least they're being consistent like my Chicago Bears.
Oh.
So, but it's always rough when you lose your homecoming.
Yeah. We haven't talked to Bears.
Really,
for good reason.
Yeah, right now I don't want to talk Bears. They broke my heart.
They did. I can understand that, like, for sure, but at least you're not the Jets right now.
That's true. That is true. Spend all that money and you're back to Wilson.
Well, I think they're going, what's his name? The other guy. Anyway, I don't know. Yeah. Football sport.
All right. So what are you drinking?
I'm drinking Old Chub. We talked about it last time, and I had to go get some Old Chub because, man, it's just so good. It's a Scotch ale from Oscar Blues up in Longmont, Colorado. And I highly recommend. I'm going to take a drink.
From the can.
From the can.
I'm a bit of a
weird looking can now. I will say they tried to, because it's a Scotch ale, they tried to go like, hey, now we've got a plaid. And I'm like, no, don't do that, because it used to be just a green can. Yep. And it was awesome looking. And this is weird looking. So what are you going to do?
Plaid is ruined for me because when I see it, I think of Spaceballs. So
they've gone plaid.
They've gone to plaid. So I'm a bit of a snob. I prefer a bottle, although I will drink from a can. Absolutely. I have Founder's Porter.
Founder's Porter.
It's pretty good.
Which is a porter.
It is a porter, yes. Mm-hmm. In a previous discussion tonight, we were trying to determine, does it fall under an ale or is it a standalone porter?
Yeah, I think it's a Scotch porter.
There you go.
I don't know, but I don't know what the differences are. I have friends for that. I don't pay attention to those details. I'm the guy who you ask how the Apple event went on Tuesday.
So what I'm seeing online, it says that a porter is darker and more full-bodied.
Full-bodied. I like it when they talk about liquids like they are women.
Yeah.
This is a full-bodied.
Yes.
Okay.
So before we get into what I hope we're going to be able to talk about tonight, pending more technical, is I did want to throw something out, an idea that hit me in the shower of all places. That's
where the best ideas
hit. So obviously I knew that the event happened, didn't pay attention to it, still haven't really seen it. No, there's new phones and new watches. That's about the extent of what I know. But I've had people at work coming up to me saying, "Hey, I'm getting the new iPhone. I'm trading my phone in. They're giving me $1,000 for my phone." And I'm like, "Wait, what? What model do you have?" Most of them have a 13. And I'm like, "Wow, okay, $1,000, kind of hard to pass that up." So I get home, confirm my wife has an 11. Go on to AT&T. How much are they going to give? They were going to give $830 for her iPhone 11.
Nice.
And I'm sitting here going, where's the win here? AT&T gets you into a contract, but that doesn't mean they necessarily get any more money. There has to be a catch.
Lock you down.
Yeah, and I've been thinking, and then it was like, oh, wait. They talked about the fact that they were using recycled materials. And so I'm sitting here going, did they work a deal either out with AT&T or with some recycler to bring these back because there's even more value to be stripped out of the phone in these materials? And so AT&T is giving you a chunk up front. They're turning around and selling it either direct to Apple or to some middleman. And then they're going to kick it all back. And that's how they're trying to reclaim all these materials to be more green.
I mean, it's a good question. I don't know exactly how they're doing what they're doing, but it would make sense to me that if you're talking about we need to recycle more, we need to use these materials that we already have and stop, mining for it and everything like that you have to get the old phones back.
Yep.
Or you're toast.
Yep. So it'd been bugging me. I'm like, why are they giving so much money for an old phone?
And I will tell you, I think that like this, I don't want to say this out loud, but I think that they could give less and still get the number back that they're talking about.
Oh, I'm sure. But I mean, I was looking at, them like they're giving me $1,000. The phone I want costs $1,300.
It's not bad.
No, I mean it's hard to say, hey, don't do that. I mean that's a steal. Yeah. And so some folks are like, I'm just going to pay the $300 and then I'm out clean. Mm-hmm. And then some are saying, well, they're going to just pay it out over 2 years and my bill's going up a whole $5.
Yeah, that's not bad. But they are. I mean, they're trying to go more carbon neutral for. I think their goal is 2030. For being completely carbon neutral.
Okay.
So they're trying on the phones to be more carbon neutral. They're saying that the watch now, at least the I don't think they said it about the Ultra. I think they haven't said it about the Ultra yet, but the other Series 9, I think is what we're at.
Mm-hmm.
The Series 9 watch is carbon neutral. Like they've covered its production for being carbon neutral, which is a feat. And I will say, if you watch the whatever it's called, keynote,
mm-hmm.
the announcement, they do like a whole skit, and I walked in the middle of it, and Chad Larsh, one of our friends who I watched it with, he was like, "You walked in at a bad time." It's like they're having a conversation with Mother Earth, and I was like, "Okay, I'm out."
I heard that section was about 45 minutes long.
It's just terrible. I mean, I understand. Like, this is what they are, is their highest priority. So, of course, you would do something like this. To some of us, it smacks a lot of
virtue signaling.
I don't know. Just it sounds virtue. It's I don't know what you want to call it. It's a little bit disingenuous, is what it feels like. But I'm sure that's the way they feel about Christians all the time.
Oh, I'm sure. I know on the carbon offset, to me, it was fuzzy math. Because something about a forest somewhere, and they're using the carbon sequestration. There's my big word for the day.
Sequestration.
That the tree can do to offset the carbon. So it's not that they're reducing the so-called carbon pollution. We'll have that conversation another day.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just that, hey, these trees over here collect this much, and we've paid X number of dollars to have lay claim to these trees, and now we're neutral.
Yeah.
So
they're going to make sure those trees don't go away.
Yes.
Until, nature takes them.
Yes.
Let me tell you what, let's talk about how we don't clear forests anymore, and now we have huge fires in California.
Oh, yeah.
It's fine, though. I think that's not related at all. Anyway.
Yeah.
This is not the beer and political conversation you're looking for.
Correct.
Yeah, let's talk about podcast.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the history as I see it. I'm sure
absolutely.
Different people see it from different angles.
Sure, but I think you're a student. I'm not really a student of this, and so having an actual student of it makes that better.
Potentially, but I mean, you're the actual practitioner. This is only my third show. You've got a few under your belt.
Yeah, but I just record a meeting. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, I want to talk a little bit about that, some of the people involved, and then kind of get into what is currently called Podcasting 2.0, which is really what kind of got me going in the last few years. Yeah, getting really excited about podcasting and where it's going. Mm-hmm. So I know a lot of people, you say podcasting, they obviously think iPod, because that's where it all kind of kicked off. The famous Apple event, was that possibly D3 where they were talking about that? Because I know he had a couple of people on stage where he was making that announcement, or it may have been an early Apple event, but he was announcing Apple podcasts.
Yeah, I remember.
And he played a specific podcast and dropped some language. And what are you going to do? It's live. And
what are you going to do?
And not only that, he was dropping language about his Mac messing up, which is just salt in the wounds.
It's just beautiful, though.
Yes. So when I go back to the beginning, obviously podcasting isn't podcasting without RSS. I mean, that's what it's all built on. So just some quick things to throw out there, just to know, RSS 1.0 was December of 2000. So 23.
Really? It was that late?
23 years.
Okay. RSS, to me, RSS is like where so many other things started.
Yes.
Like, it feels like people were doing RSS feeds well before they were, the internet was cool.
Yeah, because it was getting baked into various blogs or whatever you were doing, and you could subscribe via RSS and know when there was a new post.
Yep.
Yep. So RSS.
I remember all the blogs. Do you
yes.
remember? Oh my gosh, what was the one everybody did there for
Blogger?
Zanga?
I don't know that I knew Zanga.
Was it Zanga? Oh my gosh, I think it was Zanga. Anyway, all right, go ahead.
Okay. So RSS 2.0 was 2009.
Okay.
And so again, that's still a ways back. And so nothing has really been done.
Yeah.
So in terms of going back to the origins, I kind of go back to Dave Weiner and Adam Curry. Some people may know Adam Curry from MTV, depending on your age.
Yeah.
Although he doesn't have that hair anymore.
Doesn't he? I don't know. I haven't seen it.
No, he doesn't. It's really short.
Oh man.
So basically, he saw the introduction of the original iPod, and he connected that to his days in radio, and going, that's a listening device. You can now bring audio to this. We need to figure this out. And so he had found Dave Weiner with his Music Radio Land.
Okay.
Which was basically, you could go online, you could do some basic coding and put some software together. And so Adam makeshift threw something together, sent it to Dave Weiner and said, hey, here's what I'm trying to do. Dave Weiner looked at what he had done and he said, I'm going to fix this, and please don't ever use my software again. He just didn't. He was just so appalled by how he put things together.
Oh my God.
So basically, Adam Curry put together iPodder, if you've ever heard of that. It was one of the first, if not the first, piece of software that would see that there was a new show and automatically download that for you. And so
really, that was the first.
Yes, that at least that I've been able to find. So there may be some others, but it was the idea. Even back then, our internet connections were slow. So it was great to have this piece of software that you're asleep. It sees there's a new change. It downloads the change. You wake up the next day and, oh, wow, look, I have a new episode to listen to.
Yeah, I remember doing that with like updates, that you would always do updates overnight. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, now a lot of computers, like that's what they're trying to do with all Apple stuff, is that they'll just type in your passcode. We'll do it overnight while you're plugged in, and that makes sense. But it used to be you did that because that was the number of hours that it took to get the update done.
Yeah, I feel like 2000, I may have still had dial-up. I don't know if I had a cable modem yet. So I could be wrong, but if I had cable modem, it was crazy slow by today's standards.
So in 2001, here you go, Chris, sorry. I went to start my bachelor's degree.
Okay.
In Oklahoma, and we had cable in the dorm.
Yep.
And that's how we did like the Halo LAN parties.
There you go.
Actually, you didn't have to do, because they were LAN parties. And anyway, but when Halo started to be online, where you could actually do it across the interwebs, that was all cable. Anyway.
Okay, so somebody out there may know something older, but this is as far back as I can at least find it. So he had an iPodder, and so prior to that Apple event,
spell iPodder real quick.
iPodder.
Okay, because I was hearing you say Potter, like Potter,
no,
like Harry, and I was like, that doesn't make any sense.
No, iPodder, because he took it from the iPod.
Yeah, iPod.
So going back to that event where Steve Jobs was announcing it, just before he went on stage, he actually met Adam Curry backstage, because he already knew he was introducing podcasts. That was decided. Yeah. But he put the meeting together with Adam Curry to say, hey, you're kind of seen as the person of podcasting. I want your blessing. And I understand that you have an index, and I would love to have your index to help us build out our index of shows. And so, of course, he was excited. Yeah, sure. Here you go. Here's my index, here's my show. And so that was back in the very, very early days. You're talking 04, 05, maybe a little behind that, because he was doing, now I can't think of his podcast. Daily Source Code, if anybody's heard of that. So he gives Jobs his blessing, and then Jobs goes out and does that announcement. And the show he happens to play was the most recent episode of Curry's show, and he was having trouble with his Mac, and he just drops it. My Mac is messing up like a blank. And you're just like, oh, we're live at a event. It is what it is. So that was obviously the big announcement of podcasting. And then, it had a little bit of a surge for a while, and then YouTube happens.
Yeah, man. Changing everything.
Yes. And then podcasting just kind of falls to the wayside. And so there's nothing going on. People are still podcasting. Some of your earliest podcasters would be Adam Curry, and of all people, even Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan has been at it forever. Arguably, probably the biggest podcast of the moment. So anyways, podcasting goes quiet, and you don't really hear anything about podcasting until about 2014, and that was the release of the Serial podcast. And the Serial
podcast blew everything up.
Yes, it exploded. And then all of a sudden, podcasting is fun again. It's cool again. Hey, yeah, we're all doing podcasts. And the next thing you know, everybody's got a show, including us.
Including us. And I will say, like, we were pretty specific about this when we started, and when we're doing this for us. Like,
yep.
This is a hangout time for grown men who have kids.
Yes.
And getting to talk about things that we don't really get to talk to adults about very often. But anyway, yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of reasons for it. I was going to say, like, after YouTube, then the blog made a resurgence, but it was as the vlog.
Yes.
So I think part of the resurgence of the podcast is this, like, we're recording this podcast on Riverside, which has a video aspect of it. So it's actually going to record. I mean, I'm the only one with my camera on right now, Chris.
Well, this computer doesn't have a camera. It's a little mini desktop.
There you go. But the fact of the matter is, that's the kind of technology that's being invested in right now, is that you don't just want to record online. You want to be able to record, not just your voices. You want to be able to record your voices and your camera. And then, like, you know, this is the steady, like, we just loop in as many things as we can, and get as much data as we can, and then you can choose whether or not you want to watch it or just listen to the audio. I noticed that because we also switched this past week from the WordPress site that we were trying to, like, manhandle into doing what we wanted it to do, into using RSS.com. And RSS.com now has the ability to link to a YouTube page. So if you've got RSS.com using your, you know, for your podcast, whatever, you can also link that to YouTube and show the video portion of your podcast, or video and audio, which I thought was, like, that's a big deal.
It is. Now, I'm probably of the ilk that would say, if you have video, it's not a podcast anymore.
No, it's a vodcast.
Yeah, vodcast, a vlog, whatever. Although I guess vlog, I kind of think that more is the YouTube stuff now more than anything.
Well, the guy holding the camera, he's facing himself.
That's true. That's true. Now, I have to admit, early on, I did love the video piece of it. Going way back, I'm a huge fan of John C. Dvorak, technology columnist, been around since the 80s.
Written for, that name sounds familiar.
Oh, he's, you know, PC World, PC Mag, a couple Mag. Of the Mac as well. Famously known for saying, well, I got to make sure I get this right, because he'll, if he could find me, he'd cut my head off if I get this wrong. He is quoted as saying, no one needs or wants a mouse. That's unfortunately his claim to fame with most people. What he actually said at that time at the introduction is, there is no evidence that people want or need a mouse. Two distinctly different things.
That is a very different thing to say.
But unfortunately, it turned into, he was the guy that said nobody wants or needs a mouse.
Yeah, that sounds a little bit like a hot take that didn't age well.
Yes. So he did a show called Cranky Geeks. That was you could get audio, but he also had video. Oh, I absolutely loved it. He's kind of a cranky, cantankerous type of guy. That may be why I'm drawn to him. You know, I realized that one of my favorite from Sesame Street was Oscar the Grouch.
Well, whose wasn't?
I mean, there's kind of a reoccurring theme here. I'm like, this guy's cranky. This puppet was cranky. Do I just really like cranky people?
Really like cranky people.
Yes.
Just drawn to them.
Yeah. So he did that show, typical interview-based show, but it was video, and I would get the video format just because I love to be able to see him do his thing. But eventually kind of became a so-called purist. But podcasting, it's audio only for me. The only problem I have now is I try to keep up with too many shows.
Yeah, that'll get you.
Yeah.
And I will say, like, there's a few of the shows that have been my favorites, and they're not out there anymore. So,
Yeah.
local show here in Tyler, That Time I, best podcast I've ever heard, and I think they're just not doing anything anymore.
Bummer.
Very sad.
So at current count, I actually have 20 podcasts.
You're listening to 20 different podcasts.
Attempting. I'm behind, obviously, but I'm trying.
I cannot, like, I don't have that much time in the day. So I've got maybe 5 that I try to keep track of. But one of them's a sermon.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you, podcasts that last 45 minutes, like, it's hard to fit those in.
Okay, well, then you don't want to know that at least 2 of mine hit a minimum of 3 hours.
Oh my gosh.
I'm
Chris,
sorry.
How do you do that?
I'm sorry, 3. I'm 3. So I'm a huge No Agenda fan. Adam Curry, John C. Dvorak.
Yeah.
Of course, I've been throwing those names out. Typically at least 3 hours. Go ahead.
When do you have time for that?
Driving. I have the luxury when I'm doing work. I typically don't get a lot of interruptions, so I can put headphones on and I'll listen while I'm working because I'm spending a lot of time at the keyboard. So next is one called Mo Facts. Huge fan. Highly recommend. Again, it's another Adam Curry show. He's meeting with a guy named Mo Facts. All I know is that he's a black guy. He's kept his identity fairly quiet just because he didn't want to involve his family.
No, that makes sense.
I've learned so much from listening to this podcast. Him giving a black male perspective of America. And it's not woke stuff. I mean, he's just straightforward. Like, hey, this is what it is. This is how it is for me.
Yeah, not necessarily like an agenda. He's just saying what his thoughts on it are.
Correct.
On anything.
So that one again, typically 3 hours. And then you jump to Dan Carlin, Hardcore History. I'm a huge history fan. Now, thankfully, his don't come out very often. But when he does drop a show, it's at least 3 hours. He has released some that are like 5-6 hours.
Oh my gosh.
But he's doing such a deep dive into what he's discussing that you need that amount of time just to get it into that episode. And so he'll do a series, and there may be 10 to 12 episodes in that series, and they're all at least 3 hours.
I don't know how you, number one, like, I wouldn't be able to sit and listen to that for that long. And I understand that you're not saying that you never get interrupted. But then if I ever got interrupted in the middle of that, I'd have to go back at least 20 minutes and recap what I was like when I went back to the show. I would have to rewind it.
Yep.
At least that long. This is the way I was. Like, this is why I had such a hard time in college reading. Like, all the required reading in college was hard for me because I would get interrupted or I would like lose my train of thought. And if I did that, I had to go back like a ways in order to gain my train of thought back and be able to connect those thoughts in my mind. And it's like, if I do that with audio, like I would just never get anything finished.
I like to think that I get most of the stuff out of it. There may, to your point, there may be stuff that I lose the connections on.
Mm-hmm.
So that's some of my consumption. I obviously subscribe to all of the church's podcasts. Try to stay current on those.
The church has 3 different podcasts.
3, yes.
If you count the sermon.
Yes.
Which is, yeah, but the in between, though, that's the only one that I'm on. It is a podcast. It is just we have to have that meeting every week to talk about where we're going in the sermon and with the music and all that stuff. So that's a required like meeting that we would have no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, especially we started actually recording it during COVID, because at the very beginning of COVID, because I was like, we need a way to engage with people. And I've been thinking about how some people would like to probably hear the like behind the scenes of sermon prep.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, like, we've been doing it ever since. It's kind of the mindset behind it, but it's not it's not the same thing as like the other big podcast from the church is Reconstructed Faith, and that thing, like, they have a reason for doing that podcast. They are trying to educate inside of that, and it's a totally different thing, but it's worth checking out. Look up Reconstructed Faith at some point on wherever you get your podcast. That's a good one.
All right, there's your plug.
There's the plug.
Okay, so I know we're already at 30. We don't want these to go too long, so I'll try to get through this without
you got it.
Truncating too much.
Mm-hmm.
So, like we said, Serial comes around, podcasting explodes. Then everybody has a podcast. And then it kind of starts to go quiet again because, again, there's no real innovation in podcasting other than now we've got famous celebrities who now have a podcast, or we're taking NPR or PBS shows and then repackaging them as a podcast, so that in case you miss the live show, you could at least download it later and listen to the show. Mm-hmm. And so about almost 3 years ago, you get the introduction of the Podcast Index, which again is Adam Curry, the recurring theme here. So he kind of looks at what's going on. And for him, this all kicked off because of what happened with the deplatforming of Alex Jones. I'm not going to get into Alex other than that man can be so entertaining. Why'd they turn the friggin' frogs gay type of stuff? So, but I understand why they all went after him, why they deplatformed him. But he looked at it, it's a bigger picture and going, oh, wait a minute. That's actually a problem.
Yeah.
They can say, okay, we don't like you anymore. You're gone.
Like you can't have a platform anymore.
Correct. So Apple drops him and then everybody else follows suit. Google drops him, Spotify. I mean, you name it, all the players in the market, he's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's managed to survive, but he's not getting near the reach that he had. And so he's going, hey, this is a huge problem. This is a free speech issue as well. Now, granted, these are private companies, so they can kind of do what they want to do, but this feels like collusion. We need something that can push back against this. So he starts working on the idea of the index initially. So it's an index of all the podcasts, all their RSS feeds. Anybody can access it. You can download the entire database anytime you want and create your own index if you wanted to compete against the podcast index. I mean, you literally could download the database every day, update your index, and be a direct so-called competitor, and they don't care.
Yeah.
They just want to be out there. We're trying to be as independent and unbiased as we can. Here's everything.
Yeah.
So that then turns into, hey, we actually need to protect and extend open podcasting. And I say open because Apple and Spotify and Google and Amazon and all the others out there, there's nothing open to what they do. It's very much a closed system, in my opinion.
It is, and I think the reason people don't see it is because it's free.
Correct.
There's so many aspects of it that are free. It's free to do. Like it doesn't cost money for me to put a podcast on Apple.
Yep.
But they review.
They do. And all I have to do is sit through these crappy ads that get dropped in, sometimes at the worst times.
I mean,
so
I don't do that to me. I didn't. Yeah. Anyway.
Yes. So again, I view those as closed. Some people may view it otherwise, but that's how I see it. Open podcasting, in my opinion, is just pure RSS. Here's my feed. Here's where my episodes are. Now your application can download it. You've got it. Listen to it. So they extend the podcast index to what they call podcasting 2.0 with the intentions of introducing features to podcasting that would hopefully expand the user base, draw more people in, and get people going. So they've introduced a ton of tags, some that we're actually taking advantage of. We'll get into those in a minute, especially if you haven't had a chance to look at some of what we have. We can go through it in real time, and maybe people listening to this could do the same.
That'd be fun.
So, so right now, well, I guess as of a few days ago, they had 4.29 million podcasts.
4.2. I mean, wrap your head around that.
Yes.
That's a big number.
Now that obviously includes dead podcasts. That includes a ton of one episode listed, and it's the guy going fart, poop. That kind of stuff. It's literally just people playing around, just being stupid and silly because they could.
Yeah, because it's free.
Yes. So of that 4.29 million in the last 30 days, only 355,000 have had a new episode posted.
Oh, wow.
That is a huge gap.
Huge gap.
Yes. So you listen to Apple and especially Spotify bragging about, we have 4-point-something million shows, blah, 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 blah.
Don't you dare.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
Not worth listening to.
Yes. So that's kind of, and I love that. You can go to the podcastindex.org. There's a plug. You can see all these stats in real time. They kind of put it all out there. Here's how many shows we have. Here's how many have updated in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. You can kind of view it all.
Yeah.
So highly recommend you can go check that out. So the primary components, the Podcasting 2.0, is to expand the podcast namespace, to enable web app friendliness, and then value for value.
What do you mean space?
The namespace is within the RSS feed. I think the most common one that maybe some people have seen would be chapters. I know that existed before Podcasting 2.0. I don't remember the company who came up with it though. But so in that previously you could have basically the TXT, which you could include your email, because until recently that was used to prove ownership of a feed. They could send an email to to what was in the feed. You could get the email and respond. They go, okay, yeah, you're really the owner of this feed.
Yeah.
And then Apple has a lot of what was in there was Apple proprietary. So like a GUID, unique identifier for your show. There is an Apple GUID for every single show. And so all the podcast apps know, okay, this is the podcast. This is its GUID. This is what it is. I can talk to Apple and say, here's what I'm after. So there really wasn't a whole lot going on there. So they have come up with a ton of tags. I won't try to go into full detail on all of them. There are a ton of tags. So they were looking at it, and within recent memory, there was the lawsuit with the ADA and going, hey, y'all aren't compliant. My clients can't partake in your podcast. And it's like, no, they can't. They're deaf. You're right. And so this has even happened to some web pages for the blind. And it's like, my client can't use your website. So huge lawsuit. ADA ultimately won. So that for Podcasting 2.0, that leads to transcript tag. Pretty straightforward. Transcript of the show. We actually have it currently active on the previous two shows. I'm not saying it's 100% accurate.
Oh, no, of course not.
It is worth taking a look and reading and seeing how the so-called AI thinks what you're saying. But again, it extends the show to people who may be deaf and want to know something about the show. They can get the transcript, and they can at least read the transcript and know what's being discussed. They introduced what's called the funding tag. That really just kind of points to like a PayPal.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
Give me a second.
Yeah, go ahead. If there are any No Agenda listeners out there, the Powerball number is 33. Good.
Where were we?
I think we just started talking about funding, so I'll pick up with that.
Okay.
So the funding tag is pretty straightforward. It can... Oh,
that's fine.
Okay. I was going to say, because I've got it recording on my side as well. I'll send that to you.
Yeah, we're just going to do it off yours, I think.
Okay. So next is the funding tag. Pretty straightforward. Can send a link to a PayPal, can send a link to a Patreon. It's a way for listeners to send money to the podcaster, obviously to help them keep going in whatever means possible. We'll get a little deeper into that when we get into value for value and why some of that is important. Next is chapters. We actually have chapters set up on episode 1 right now. I still need to work on episode 2, and we'll work on this one. Chapters I really like. You can break your show apart for whatever you're talking about. What I really enjoy about chapters is the ability to introduce artwork. So when a chapter changes, the artwork changes in the player. Now, in order to take advantage of that, you have to have a Podcasting 2.0 enabled app. Standard apps are not going to support the tag. It's not going to work. What's really nice is, depending upon what app you're using, it's compatible with Apple CarPlay. It's Apple with Google, blinking on their car stuff. But anyways, it can work with your car's audio system, and you can actually see. Auto. Thank you, Android Auto. Should have known that since I use an Android. So you can actually see if you have the screen in your car, you can actually, the app will work through that, and you can actually see the artwork changing there as the show is going. And you can you can chop the chapters up all you want. So if you're still technically talking about the same thing, but you want to change the pictures constantly for what you're doing, you can totally do it. It just depends on how much time and effort you want to put into it. I've heard, I haven't tested it, that you could even potentially use a GIF. Some people may call that a GIF. With that art, we'll have to try that and make sure we don't potentially blow people's podcast apps up. So totally love chapters. It's also, now I don't like this, but because I want people to actually listen to a show, but chapters is actually a way to jump ahead if you wanted to. I'm not saying that you should do it, but you can.
I would say, instead of that, I would say it's an easy way to find the part of the show that you wanted somebody else to hear because they were talking about something.
Sure.
After you've listened to the whole show.
Sure. Well, there's actually a tag coming up for that, but we'll get there. Okay. So the next tag is person tag. Again, this is just about being able to say, this is the host of the show. This is the different host of the show. These are the guests who were on the show. So you can actually go into podcastindex.org or some other Podcasting 2.0 compliant index and actually search by a person's name. And now you can see every podcast they're either a part of or an episode of a given podcast they went on if they're using the person tag.
Yeah.
Kind of nice.
That's really nice.
Next is season/episode. That's kind of been around for a little while. But again, if you're doing seasons and those seasons have episodes, you can totally throw that in as a tag. You don't necessarily now have to type that out in your RSS. Trailer tag, again, pretty straightforward. This is the lead-in trailer for our new podcast. And put that out there. License tag, that gets into Creative Commons and other copyright that you could have out there. Value tag is where it really
using like somebody else's music for
copyright. No, I think actually I think the intent behind the license tag is really you protecting your content and its copyright to you. And you can say, hey, this is available under Creative Commons or some other open public copyright system, not the traditional copyright system, although you could go that way as well.
Yeah.
So then you get into value tag. This gets really interesting, and we'll play in a little bit more into value for value. The value tag actually introduces the ability for you to pay the podcaster in such a way that it circumvents other people getting a chunk of the money, so to speak. So like if you use PayPal or if you use Patreon, they're taking a fairly good chunk depending upon how much money you're potentially taking in.
Yeah.
So with the value tag, now you can introduce Bitcoin or the Lightning Network, which is a subsection of Bitcoin, or any other potential alternative way of paying people to be able to pay direct to the podcaster. Or some of the new things that's coming, and we'll get into some of that in a little bit, is to pay direct to a music artist or a potential audiobook person, or even the potential for a documentary or a movie that's being released value for value. Alternative enclosure, this gets into moving just beyond podcasting, getting into really think of video. So again, I have a documentary or I have a movie, and now with the alternate enclosure, I can say, here's where to go to get the 480. Here's where to go to get the 720. Here's where to go to get the full HD, the 4K, so on. Because ultimately, these people hosting this, or if they're self-hosting, bandwidth still costs. So it gives them the ability to say, hey, go here. You can still get it without breaking the bank. Location tag.
Breaking our bank.
Yeah, breaking our bank. Location, pretty straightforward. Where are you at when you're recording this? We're using this with rss.com. So obviously, if you search for location, Tyler, Texas, you're going to find us. They introduced their own version of the GUID. So that GUID is unique to the podcast index, but they also allow for you to link that to your Apple GUID as well. So you can have both.
Yeah.
Medium tag, that kind of gets into, is it audio? Is it music? Is it an audiobook, movie, whatever it may be? Images is if you want to have images, particularly in the chapters. The image tag will allow you to say, here's the image, here's where it's at, here's the format that it's in, here's the size. The live tag is really interesting, and this is a new growing thing in the Podcasting 2.0 group, is you actually can set the live tag. And so if you have a Podcasting 2.0 app, they go live, you get a notification in your app that, hey, they're live. They're doing a show right now. You can tap on that notification and go right to the live stream right there. Really, really cool. Really cool.
As they're recording it.
Yes, as they're literally recording it, you're listening live. So obviously, if you listen live, you may hear some pieces that aren't in the final product, depending on what kind of post-production they do.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. You wouldn't hear that. We had to break in the middle of this because of a coughing fit.
Correct.
But yeah.
Correct. So social interact, that gets into comments is how I would describe that. You can link. So what they're leveraging right now is Mastodon, which is kind of what Twitter was before Twitter introduced the algo. So it's literally just a time.
What Mastodon is.
Well, I'm playing in a different pool of things. So
you definitely are.
Yeah. So a lot of this comes from Adam Curry, No Agenda. So Mastodon, if you remember the old days of Twitter, there was no algo to say, hey, we actually think you would like this because you said this. It was literally just a timeline, and you could scroll through that timeline feed and see things. That's basically what Mastodon is. It's Twitter minus the algo that feeds the vitriol or the hate or whatever it is that it's feeding to you. So you take a post on Mastodon, and you link that to a given episode. And now anything that gets attached or responds to that post on Mastodon now becomes comments to that podcast.
Wow.
And the beauty of it is now this can go across applications, again, that support Podcasting 2.0 tags. So I could open up Fountain as an example of an app, see the comments. I could open up CurioCaster, see those exact same comments. I can post in from one app and see it show up on the other app. So very similar to the way comments work in YouTube.
Wow.
Very interesting.
But that's just one medium provider. Like you're talking about different apps being able to see the same content and and not just the same content, but the same reaction to that content, and that reaction being not just a nice show, like an
Correct.
actual comment,
Correct.
an actual conversation about it.
Correct.
That's intense.
That's an interesting one. TXT, they had to introduce this because they, for whatever reason, everybody decided having your email in your RSS feed was irrelevant. I don't know why they came to that conclusion. So the TXT is a way to reintroduce your email so that, again, you can do proof of ownership of your RSS feed. Because they stripped that out. Again, this gets back to Apple, and they're kind of in control, and they're the behemoth, and whatever they say, people fall in line. So not trying to bash Apple in this case, but that's...
Sure you are.
No. Other times I am, absolutely, but not in this case. So they come up with a TXT tag. Now, there's other things you can do with it, but that's the most common one. We're going to reintroduce our email address. You can now confirm it. You send it. I respond. You know I now own this.
Yeah.
Remote item is a fairly new one. That gets interesting. So that you can actually call literally a remote feed. You could recall a remote image, a remote MP3, whatever it is, and pull that into the feed. This gets really intriguing around doing music because I don't necessarily have the file local.
Interesting.
Now I can call it remote where it's hosted and it gets fed into the feed. So there's a lot that you could potentially do with that.
It'd be interesting because it would have to be something that, like, I mean, you can't just do that with Apple Music because that person would have to have, whoever's listening to it would have to have a subscription.
Yes.
Things like that.
Apple's not going to let you do that. So again, caveat to this is you probably have to self-host in order for this ultimately to be useful. But again, it's an intriguing tag. Update frequency, really nothing to say about that. That's pretty straightforward. Yeah. Pod ping is fairly new. I probably should have read a little bit more of this to be able to explain it. The general thing, going back to the beginning with Apple talking about we're carbon neutral. If they really want to be carbon neutral, they will leverage pod ping. Because the current way that it works is all these applications and all these phones and all these apps are constantly checking, utilizing CPU cycles, electricity, the whole nine. Instead, you let Podping take care of that. One person is checking those feeds, and then they send a notification to the app.
Nice.
You cut down on all the so-called carbon, and you're more carbon neutral.
Every little bit helps.
If you're listening, Apple, you should introduce this.
That's an interesting idea.
Yes. And then so the last one, this kind of gets into what's happening around music, and that is the value time split. I've heard it recently referred to as wallet switching technology, which makes it sound fancy and cool. So literally what this is doing, and this is getting into where podcasting 2.0 is going, and really kind of gets me excited and gets me rolling, is this is being leveraged currently for music. So Adam Curry, I'm saying his name again, does a new show. I think they're like 6 episodes in, called The Boostagram Ball. And he is playing music from independent artists.
Yeah, you told me about this.
Yes, he's pulling from Wave Lake. I think he pulls from Ellen Beats. There's one other. I don't remember. SoundCloud maybe is the other one that supports this. Mm-hmm. So he is literally doing a live podcast. So the live tag. You can listen in live to the music that he's playing. Him being a radio DJ pre-MTV. This is his bread and butter. This is what he grew up on. He did pirate radio when he was in the Netherlands. Mm-hmm. So this is really him back in his element. He's able to put on basically a live radio show, but he's calling these songs that are hosted someplace else.
Right.
So with that, when
he's not pulling out a disc from his library.
No disc, no record, no 8-track, no nothing. So
the way the DJs used to.
Yes. So live on the fly, he is calling a show, and what's happening live. Now, he's actually manipulating this behind the scenes. I don't want to make it sound like it's automatic, but he starts a track from a musician, and immediately any potential streaming sats, Satoshis, this gets into the Lightning and Bitcoin that were going to the podcast are redirected now to the music artist.
That's pretty cool.
Yes. And if you do any boosts, which is called a boostagram, think of that as, what do they call that on YouTube, where you can send a dollar amount with a comment?
They don't usually do that on YouTube. They do it on like Twitch and.
Yeah, Twitch has it. YouTube has it too. It's like a super chat, I think is what YouTube calls it. Basically, you can send a chunk of money with a comment. So any boostagrams that happen while that music is playing, again, that's going over to the artist, which is amazing. There is let me pull it up so I'm kind of getting this right. There is a young girl right now who kind of exploded on the scenes on Wave Lake. Ainsley Costello. She released a song called Cherry on Top about the time that Boostagram Ball started, exploded. She was the first person on Wave Lake to be able to get more than 1 million Satoshis for one song.
Dang.
Now, granted, that's not a huge chunk of money. I think that's in the ballpark of $300 to $400.
Yeah, but I mean, that's not the point.
Correct. It's the fact that she got it. No record labels, no middleman, no.
Was it Maroon 5?
Yes, no anybody. So like right now, she's at 1.1 million Satoshis just for the song "Cherry on Top." Very poppy type of song.
Sure.
So she got all of that while that song is playing, streaming and boosts. And then when the song is done, then it rolls back to him. So he's paid for whatever he's speaking about. He cuts to the next song. He switches it to that artist. And now that artist gets any money that's coming in.
That's pretty neat.
It's amazing.
Good.
Go ahead.
Like you said, value for value. It's not a, he's not inserting himself into the value of playing something.
Correct. And what I love about it, it is not the typical Apple says you can buy my song and it's worth 99 cents.
Yeah.
You now as the listener can say, I absolutely
99 cents to you.
Yes.
To the artist, it's worth 13 cents. Less than that.
Oh yeah, they're getting next to nothing. So going back to Ainsley, she had her music out for 3 years on all the major streaming. She had made a total of $600 in that time. In a matter of a handful of months doing value for value, she has made over $400.
That's pretty cool.
Yes, it really is. And so the heart of value for value is you're listening to a podcast. You could be listening to music. Eventually it could be some type of audiobook, or it could be a movie or a documentary or whatever it is. And you get to now give back what you see the value, not just the value that Apple or Google or whoever is saying. If you listen to that song and you're like, hey, that song's worth $5, you send them $5. If you say that song is worth $30, you send them $30. It's up to you. Whatever value you're getting, you should give that value back. That's kind of the whole.
You used to have to buy whole albums to be able to listen to one song.
Oh,
you'd spend $10 on an album, but really you were spending $10 on one song.
Yeah. There's plenty of those that I bought an entire CD. And
maybe 2.
Yeah, and there was one good song, and that's it. The rest of the CD was just trash.
Golly.
So this is amazing. You can listen to. They basically have it all out there. You can listen along. You can be streaming, or you can send boost, or however you want to do it. And again, this is all wrapped into podcasting 2.0. If you're not using a Podcasting 2.0 app on your phone or a web-based app, you're not going to be able to take advantage of any of this. I encourage anybody out there who doesn't have it, go get a Podcasting 2.0 enabled app.
There's a bunch.
I'm not getting paid to tell people to go do this.
We're not.
New podcasting, was it new? Well, they recently changed it. New.
You sent me a whole list. We can put some, like, we're going to tag this show with some of these details.
If you go to newpodcastapps.com, that will take you to more than just apps. You can see hosting companies and everything else. And so when you and I were going back and forth and I was telling you, hey, I'm looking at all these different hosting companies, this is where I was going and setting these filters. So I was choosing hosting and going, okay, what do these hosts do?
Yeah.
So we're using RSS.com. We looked at Blueberry. We looked at Captivate. We looked
at RSS Blue.
Yeah, we looked at RSS Blue. All of those are great services. We settled on RSS.com. These apps are cross-platform. Some of them are unique to Apple. Some are unique to Android. There are web-based apps. So you can literally have a podcast app that's in the browser. You can do all your subscriptions there, whatever you want to do, and it's all out of the browser. That can work on your computer. That could even work in the browser on your mobile device. It's not unique to just your computer. So I like, and this again is Android, iOS. I would suggest people go check out Fountain. The nice thing about Fountain is you can actually earn free Satoshis just for listening to shows. And then you can then take those free Satoshis and then pass them on to your favorite podcaster. Maybe it's Beer and Gear. Send those over our way.
That would be nice.
Yes. So I encourage people to go here, check it out.
Podcasts.
Yes. So again, I love where podcasting is going. I love what Podcasting 2.0 is doing. At least somebody's trying.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ethics involved in all of this that we haven't been able to talk that much about because this episode was drinking out of a fire hose for sure.
Yes.
But like the drive behind so much of it is the, again, ethics of it. Like how do we do this without the sleaziness of what it can turn into?
Yes. And then let me ask you, John, have you had a chance to look at some of the things unique to our show, like the chapters that are up for the first episode, or have you even attempted to take a peek at that?
Not yet. No, I haven't even gotten to look at it because I was sick for like all of this past week. I mean, I still am not 100%. But there's been, family stuff and work stuff, and then also being sick, not helpful for even us being able to get together to have this third episode. But
okay,
I plan on it. That's going to be great.
So if anybody out there has an existing Podcasting 2.0 app, you go right now. Episode 1 has chapters. You'll see the images change. It leads in with the show. It's got our logo. Then it switches to the various beers that we were talking about. You can see images from those. And then as we were kind of going through, I even found an image to throw out there for the 3.2 beer that you discussed.
Really?
Yes. And it kind of talks a little about, I don't know how well it's going to show up in a podcast app, but it's referencing 3.2 beer. And then we talked about IT Crowd.
Look at that.
Are you looking at it now?
So I just download Fountain because I had the one that I had downloaded before was
Castamatic?
No, it doesn't have the name on it. It's throwing me off. Shoot. Fathom.
I don't know that
what I was trying to use. And Fathom, it's on the list of ones, but it didn't have our podcast on it. So I was trying to find a new one.
Okay.
So now that I've got Fountain on here, that's the one I'm going to use. But
you can get free Satoshis.
Fountain, I just saw podcast, and that it has the new logo on
yeah,
it.
that's right.
So,
The new show art.
show art.
Yes, and then sub to that, you can have different for each episode. And if you notice, there is technically a slight variation between episode 1 and episode 2.
Yeah.
Episode 1 is the gray background. Episode 2 has the white background. But then you can look at those chapters. And so we talked about the show. So I've got Jen and everybody sitting on the couch to that reference. I found a random chair for like the feelings chair segment that we talked about. When we talked about specific gear, I threw some images out of the gear that we were talking about.
Talked about the feelings chair.
Yeah. We referenced Clean Feed. That's out there. We talked about Dennis Miller. I grabbed an image of Dennis Miller. We briefly talked about Podcasting 2.0, and then that's actually a picture of Adam Curry, current. So, chapters still to come for episode 2, and obviously for this episode once it kind of gets out there. I enjoy this when I'm on a road trip and I'm watching.
Sure.
I'm watching this change on screen while I'm listening.
Right. It's almost like you were watching people doing it, but no, where this is just the information that they're giving us about what they're talking about. Yes. So,
and then one other thing, let me see if I can get to it real quick, because I know we probably need to be wrapping this.
That's fine.
In fact, you actually want to go along with me here. Log into rss.com.
Going. Ours? Log into ours?
Yes, log into ours. Apparently I can't type. Can't type, can't spell. Blame the beer.
I don't think you can blame it just yet. I mean, unless you've had more than one.
I've had 2, but I wouldn't think that would make me unable to type. There we go.
I mean, you just never know.
Okay, so are you logged in?
Yeah.
Okay, so up at the top, go to monetization.
Uh-huh.
And third section down, you'll see value for value.
Value for value.
And you'll
235 stats.
Sats.
Or sats, not
one
stats.
One boostagram. So you see where it says visit Albie's website. Go ahead and click on that.
Yeah.
And you can see that I sent it. I sent this as a test to make sure it was working. And then out to the right, you've got the little carrot pointing down. If you click on that, it expands and you can see the details. But more importantly is you can see the note, and the note says, love the show, keep it up.
Nice.
So that, again, this gets into the interactivity of podcasting. Now, we're not doing live, so we can't respond to you live, but if we were live, we could be seeing these.
I'm not saying it's not happening in the future.
Sure. So what I would encourage folks, if you want your name called out, this is a way.
This is a way.
Send us a boostagram and we'll read it. Now, don't write us War and Peace, but this is a way to say encouragement, or to say, hey, I don't like you covering that, whatever it may be.
Yes, encouragement.
Yes, encouragement. So this is a way, again, through Podcasting 2.0 for the listener to interact with the podcaster. That changes everything. And if you're doing you can imagine being in a live show, these things are hitting you live in the middle of the show. You see it come in, and you can now react in real time to that listener, and they get to hear that basically from their end, which is almost real-time interaction coming back from the podcaster. Starts to make podcasting very interactive, which completely changes the nature of what podcasting has always been.
Absolutely. I mean, actually live interaction. That's a big deal.
Correct. And then we have the ability to actually determine the splits. That's something that we didn't talk about a while ago. I know we're getting long. We'll try to wrap this up. Is we can
keep saying that. You got to stop saying that.
Yeah, I know. It's going to mess me up because the first episode, we kind of made it clear we were wrapping up, so I was able to label it last call. So you can actually set the split when it comes in. Right now, we keep 95%. 5% goes to rss.com. We can set up our own wallets and say percentage goes to you, percentage goes to me, percentage stays for the show.
Yeah.
Or however we want to break that up. And you can now spread this out. So this is obviously huge for music. You have multiple artists. When those Satoshis come in, this percentage to the singer, this percentage to the guitarist, the drummer, the bassist, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
So
the drummers always get less. It's just the way it is.
I would love to see the drummers at least get an equal split to everybody else.
Yeah, it's just not going to happen. Ringo kind of messed it up for all of us.
So I have a whole ton more, but we need to stop. I know we're running long. Gives us plenty of content for future shows.
Plenty of content, and also like, man, we're gonna have to debrief this one just by itself because it has been a lot of information for sure. Yeah, I've been along for the ride.
Yeah, so I love this. I love what they're doing. I would love to see it grow. Love to see it take off, circumvent, a lot of the big players in the market that hold back music artists or hold back podcasters in general. This is an opportunity to circumvent all those people in the middle, and people actually get better value for what they're putting out there.
I love it. That's fantastic.
Yes. All right.
Hey, thanks for hanging out with me.
Yeah. Thank you for going long.
Having a beer.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Or two.
I need to get a refrigerator here next to me for these long shows so that I can just keep pulling them out.
Yeah, that second one was a little warm, but good. Maybe in future shows I can send my wife a text and she can slip me a cold one.
There you go. She would do it for sure.
Yeah. Enjoyed it. I was glad to share some of this.
Absolutely.
So we're not necessarily a value for, I guess we technically are, we're set up a value for value podcast. So throw this out real quick. If you got any value from this show and you happen to have a Podcasting 2.0 app, this is a great way for you to throw back value. You send us a Boostergram. I'll gladly read it out on the show.
I love it.
So, all right. Enjoyed it, John.
Thanks, brother.
All right. See you next time.
All right.